Welcome everyone. Today we have another new episode, and this episode based on the future of consumptions. We have our new guest, Mr. Mark Lee,
How you doing?
as well. Yes, and as well as we have Mr. Brent Elman. We have few other guests. They will join soon. So I want to start from Mark Lee. I think Brent Elman everybody knows from World Talent Economy Forums, and I want to start from Mr. Mark Lee. So can you please introduce your strong contribution in media and electronics
Oh,
arena?
no
And
problem. No
yes.
problem at all. I've actually been in media since I was a teenager, and as you can tell by the white beard and everything, I'm in my late 50s, so definitely not a teenager anymore. But my parents started a community radio station when I was actually it probably was a preteen because I was probably around 14 or 15 at that time. I guess that is the teenage years, but they started that in the rural town of Warrenton, North Carolina, because they did not hear jazz and they did not hear enough representation of the news that they would like to hear. So that being
Mhm.
said, that they started a community radio station, and I've been involved in the media ever since, having worked with African American press like the Carolinian fresh out of college when I went to Marquette University, as well as WNCU, and still involved with a number of media outlets. I met Sharif through IBM TV, where I've got several streaming podcasts, and then I've also done work with WCOM, which is a community radio station in Carrboro, and a number of other media and event planning outlets. So, event planning and the media is kind of my forte and what I've been involved in for a number of years.
Mhm. Thank you, Mr. Markley. We have our advisor for World Talent Economy Forum, Dr. Eric Dews. Even we are working on autonomous vehicles from Cyberjaya to Silicon Valley. So long time we are actually working together, and Mr. Eric Dew has a lot of contribution in tech industry. So Dr. Eric Dew, we are discussing about future of consumptions. So what's new you want to share with our audience?
Oh, I should start first, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me just quickly explain to myself. I am Eric. I live here in San Francisco, and I'm involved with various startups, as well as with various technologies, and also the nexus of that together with neighborhoods, governments. People and other people to sort of understand how the market, the people, the neighborhoods, and so forth will utilize new technology and new and new business models and such. So that's my interest in finding that, and my prognostication for the future of consumption, which I guess is what you're asking about, is that more and more things will go to a rental basis. Literally everything that is not consumed in the sense of like eating, okay, will be rented. People will pay, and the rent will be at the micro level. And generally you won't pay per use or whatever. You might pay an annual fee or something like that, and people will do this because it's more convenient. It's going to be actually cheaper for them, and for the producers and the manufacturers of the product, they're actually going to make more money per unit in the long run. So, for one example that I am currently using is the public bicycles that we have on the roads here in San Francisco. I consider, buying a bicycle for myself, but I'm thinking about it. I rent a bicycle from Bay Wheels, which is the name of the program that we have here in San Francisco. Every other region, city, metropolitan area have their own name for that. So Bay Wheel works both San Francisco, northern part of San Mateo, East Bay in Oakland, and so forth. And I pay $130 a year $130 a year to rent. Maybe it's $150 now. I don't know what it is. For me to buy a bicycle, a decent bicycle, would be around $2,000 now. Okay,
Yeah.
$150 a year. 10 years is $1,500. 15 years is about $2,250. I ain't got 15 years left in my life. I'm lucky if I would. Okay, I'm not young anymore. I'll be happy if I can live an extra 15 years. But even if it's an extra 20 years, 30 years, it's still cheaper in the long run than for me to buy a bicycle. I don't have to maintain it. I don't have to worry about being stolen. I don't have to worry about, fixing things, adding new stuff to it, all that. None of those things. I go somewhere, I slam it into the dock, and I'm off, and I'm walking. Okay, that's what it is. So think about it. Here's another example. I don't want to take up too much point. Maybe Mark, why don't Mark come on in? I don't want to take up.
I just had a quick question for you, based on what you were saying and everything. Sharif will tell you I'll jump in on a conversation in a heartbeat and everything based on his experiences with me at IBM TV and everything. But definitely one of the things I was curious about was we here in Durham, North Carolina, where I'm at, we had a lot of the same kind of things where a lot of folks were using the rental bicycles. I remember they had Lime, they had a couple of the other companies that come from the West Coast and New York and some of the other places. But then the pandemic hit and there's been less of that, even though now with spring coming up and us having herd immunity starting to try to happen around here, I imagine that we'll get more of that happening, more people using those rental bikes. But the question I've got with that is that I know a lot of times the folks that are, we've got a class divide here in the United States. And within that class divide, not everybody has credit card access and things of that nature. So I was just wondering your thoughts about the class divide and how we can get around that, because I do agree with you that more and more people are going to use consumer-based products. But like I said, not everybody has the access to the credit card, which is pretty much how those rental bicycles work and everything.
Sure, yeah. I mean, credit card or debit card or whatever, but we're going to go more and more to a digital economy as well. Government loves it because it's trackable to some degree, right? It's more trackable in that sense than cash. Cash is underground, okay? You use cash to buy illicit drugs. You use cash to buy, sex on the streets or whatever it is. But even then, I got to tell you, I don't buy drugs, so I can't prove for sure. They're going to go digital as well eventually. Okay, I mean certainly the legal part, right? Marijuana it's currently still cash, even though in many states like California, marijuana is legal. But it's still cash because the federal government, the banks, right? The banks don't want to deal with it because at the federal level, marijuana is not legal. So multiple states are legal, but the federal level is not. So banks don't want to deal with businesses that are running cannabis-based businesses. So now you have people who are running these cannabis-based businesses, having $50 million or something in cash hiding in their home. And that becomes less of an asset and more of a liability, because now that's just telling people, hey, come here and rob this place, Right. So they would like to have digital, right? Everybody wants to go digital because it's safer, right? If I have a credit card in me or a debit card in me, it happened to me. I went to France, Paris, a couple years back, and I was pickpocketed on the train coming in from Charles de Gaulle into Paris. I was pickpocketed, nothing. I go to, luckily I bank with Bank of the West here in San Francisco. Bank of the West is part of Bank Paribas, which is Paris, and I went to a local branch there, and I said, "Hey, I got pickpocketed, blah blah blah, and all that," and they helped facilitate it, and I got a new card mailed to that bank the following day or the day after, or whatever, and I went to the bank and I picked it up. I couldn't get it mailed to the address that I was in because I was using Airbnb, another rental. Okay, I was using Airbnb, which is also good because here's the thing: is that I already paid for the place on Airbnb, so the host, was there, and I called. Luckily, I didn't have my phone stolen. I contacted the host, and they were there to help open the door for me to let me in. If it were a hotel, they go, "Sorry, bud, You don't have a credit card, you're not staying here. I would have been out in the streets that night. Okay,
Right.
but with Airbnb, I got in. The next day, I went to the bank, and then the day after, I got the card, and I'm happy as a clam. Okay, there's something cash can't do. You know, I lost cash there. The cash I brought with me was gone. You know, so that's what's going to happen.
Thank you, Dr. Eric. We have our new guest, DC Simons. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. I think today she joined first time. Thank you for joining. I know you have some challenges and problem. Can you please introduce yourself with our speakers and our audience, as well as how do you want to introduce this point, the future of consumption?
Yes. My name is Dawn Christine Simmons. I'm here in the Bay Area as well. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
And I have been listening to your introduction. Very interesting. It is an interesting time as it relates to credibility and finance. And I think one thing I would like to add to this discussion while we're talking on the subject of finance is cash does not equal credibility, but nor does fraud is being cannabis and illegal drug trafficking is big business. And in fact, they have their own credibility they're using artificial intelligence. They're using Bitcoin to transact money. They're moving funds, and it doesn't involve stacks of cash. It involves technology. The challenge is, how do we create an equitable economy for where we are to be able to get the things we have and to be able to become resilient against the fraud that seems to be a little bit more rampant during the COVID crisis?
Thank you. Mr. Brent Tillman, you are from Transhumanist Party, so how do you want to introduce this point, future of consumption?
Sure. As Don or DC was mentioning with Bitcoin, the illegal drug market really that's why Bitcoin is took off, was because of these places on the internet like the Silk Road. So I think that as these digital options propel and we have more of them, we're going to see more and more secure options as well. So I don't think that this move to digital will entirely guarantee complete oversight. But going back to what Eric was talking about as well regarding the rentals and this being the future of consumption, to an extent I'd agree with this. I think that if you were to look in the last 30 years 40 years, you could see that this has already been a trend. If you look at my generation, people who are in our 30s, early 30s, or the millennials essentially, compared to Generation Z or Generation X or the baby boomers, the percentage of people who are owning homes by the time they were 30 in the baby boomer generation, and even Gen X, it's such a big difference. Everyone in my generation, we all rent, but that's not because we want to. That's just because of the market and the way that the economy has kind of left us with the shorter end of the stick here. And I see that we have all these bike rentals and scooter rentals and things like that, and for years we've had these Rent-A-Center and places like that, but I don't really know if that's gonna inherently be what everyone does, because I think that as Mark was almost saying, that's gonna kind of create more of a gap, because you have a lot of people who also partake in the second-hand market. And so when you have all of these people who would have normally been buying their own equipment and replacing it every few years, people who have a little extra money sitting there so that they can buy a nice bike, these people typically were then taking their old one and putting on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. And I think that that's still pretty relevant here. But I think that when you look at Facebook Marketplace, for instance, these used items, they sell much quicker and much for much more money, because you can reach out to all these different people on the internet and stuff. And so I think that there's a lot of people that will continue to go down this secondhand path. And I think that as we see more of this rental stuff that Eric is discussing, I think it's possible that we see some of these companies that start stepping up to the plate and providing products that are significantly less expensive than some of the other things that are in the market, to create this new, to access a new niche of these people that want a bike but don't have $2,000 to spend. And sure, you could rent one for however much money a year, but it can't be that much money to make them in certain places. I mean, you go to Walmart, there's some cheap bikes there. And then I think that another big concept for me when I think of the future of consumption is decentralization. People talk about 3D printing. I've written about 3D food printing, for instance. When we start seeing these things, the future that I envision is one that's, reminds me of Star Trek in the sense that we have this device in our kitchen that we can, access with a computer. And, if I want to eat something that somebody prepared a recipe for on the other side of the world, I can just download it into my little computer and just print it out right there. And, as time goes on, I think that those types of technologies are just going to advance. And that's food, but I mean, all sorts of 3D printing, they've got 3D printers for plastics and metal. It's pretty simple when you have a 3D printer that's printed out plastics to take that and then turn it into metal. And that's, I mean, I know how to do that just through centrifugal casting, but I'm sure that with these advances in technology, it'll just become more and more easy for people to do these types of things in their own home. There's also now there's this right to repair movement, and the right to repair movement. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with it, but their whole agenda is to push for companies like Apple and AT&T and these major technology companies to force them to be to make the consumer capable of being able to buy these different parts so that we can actually repair our own devices, and that we're not stuck in this situation where we need to buy this new iPhone every year or 6 months because and I think that part of this movement as well is that these electronics are required to work for a certain amount of time, and if they break before a certain amount of time, and so I think that those might be some newer trends that we might see, because and I think that, as Eric was saying, rentals may be relevant here as well. I mean, why buy a 3D printer for thousands of dollars when you can just rent one and pay this monthly fee or things like that?
Exactly.
And then one of the guys here in the United States Transhumanist Party, Corey Kowal, he's actually devised a concept. It's called the Universal Basic Means of Production. And so it's similar to the universal basic income, but the universal basic means of production is playing off this concept of decentralization. And the idea is that everyone is provided these types of 3D printers and 3D food printers and things like that, and so that we're still not we don't have to buy from these major corporations, and it's giving power to the individual. And I've got some concerns with that, because I wouldn't want the government to own some products that we all have. I think it would be it would prevent healthy competition. But I think that it's a good idea. I think that decentralization is a relevant aspect in the conversation.
I like to make a quick point here about Apple. You talk about Apple as where they sell you the product and all that, but given the fact that most people own their phone for about a year, maybe 2 at best. I'm one of the more frugal ones. I owned a phone for maybe 3 years before I had a new one. What I'm doing is essentially, what Apple is essentially doing is renting it to me, is for all intents and purposes, right? I mean, my phone, my laptop that I'm talking to right now, everything, all these things, these microphones, headphones, they're rented, in the sense that I pay for it and I use it for such a short amount of time relative to what we used to do with computers and phones and such, right? When I was a child, back in the 70s or so, when we don't buy a phone, we actually literally did rent it from AT&T. Okay, that phone lasts you 30 years. Okay. Okay, that phone is the same phone that you had for 30 years with the same number and everything. Okay. Now it's 2 years, and you pay $1,000 or whatever it is, and it's 2 years, and you get a new model every 2 years or so. You're effectively renting it. Okay, that's the thing that you got to realize.
And in fact, the model has got to change before anything is going to change that paradigm, because Apple is a very good example of a company who deliberately throttles performance on their lower grade products to force the upgrade to the newer technology. Now, there are good reasons to force that, like better security, better protection, better current technology to be able to run the richer apps that we now demand. But the other side of that is we become prisoners do that constantly. I have buyer's remorse every time I upgrade my iPhone, but I need it, and I keep upgrading because I need the performance output that delivers.
Well, that's been the same since, the Wintel duopoly, right? I mean, they did the same thing. Microsoft
Yeah. Oh,
wrote bloatware, and Intel, created more.
yep. Microsoft
Brent,
control of their command and their distribution through Office 365. We no longer have little CDs that we install. We rent the ability to use it for as long as we're using.
yeah.
Mark,
Brent brought up
Marky,
a question that I was curious about and everything because it's actually a conversation I've had with some of my more millennial friends and friends that are a little bit younger than me and everything. And it actually also comes back to what we're talking about with consumption, because one of the things that I'm seeing with consumption is that we're having more and more people that are doing, I guess you could call it, kind of coming back to what Eric was talking about, a hybrid model of consumption, because I think that's what's happening in education. That's what's happening in the entertainment field, because that's part of what I'm involved in and everything, where you'll have folks that'll go to a concert, but they'll also be watching the concert or the movie online at the same time. So you get a selective amount of people that will go to the concert itself, and the rest of the audience will be watching it online and paying whatever that fee is that they have to pay to watch it online. I know that there's a number of festivals here in Durham, North Carolina that are going on right now that are using that online model because they can't have anybody in the audience, or in the case of the Poetry Slam, I think they can have like maybe 25. So we're seeing that model. But the question I have for Brent, and I would also love to hear y'all's comment on what I just said about this new hybrid model. But one of the things that I always hear people talking about is that they can't afford the rents or anything of that nature, or can't a payment for a house. They can't afford the payment for a house. And you just made that statement earlier, Brent, and everything. When I talk to my friends that are in the rental community, they're oftentimes saying the opposite of that. They're like, these folks are paying anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 for their monthly apartment rent, and that's about the same cost as a mortgage would be. So they're actually arguing against what you're saying. And I was just wondering your thoughts about that, because I know when I talk to my friends in the rental fee, they're like, I don't know why folks are not actually renting the homes or buying homes when the cost of living in terms of rentals are going up. I know here in North Carolina, the cheapest ones are like around maybe $800 or $900. So we're starting to get California and New York type prices as well. I know some of the cheapest ones in New York can be as much as $1,500 to $2,000.
Oh, real? And I'm in California. I'm in the Bay Area, and I moved to far East Bay Area because I was living right next door to Oracle and Kaiser Permanente, which are big enterprises in the Bay Area. And when they raised my rent to $5,000 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment, I couldn't afford to move, and I couldn't afford to stay. I moved to Tracy because the rents were about the $1,000. Actually, I paid $2,700 a month for a house here, where I was paying $5,000 a month for a very tiny 3-bedroom apartment there. The reason you can't get into housing, however, is yes, we can afford to pay a higher house price and rent, but we cannot afford to pay the down payment to secure the loan to be able to get into property. And so what we were talking about earlier about people of the younger age not being able to buy property, it's really about that more than anything. We don't have the nest egg that they used to have. It's all about survival.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that if you look at like salaries, wages, and stuff as well, I think that the house pricing, the rate at which housing prices have gone up, has not been anywhere close to relating to the way that minimum wage and the average salary has increased. And then on top of that, though, I know that for me, for instance, I've got a lot of friends who are a bit older than me, and they were part of this big bubble back in like the 90s, early 2000s with housing and these cheap and low interest loans, and everybody got screwed. And so I think that was kind of part of it as well, where I was dissuaded. It wasn't like everyone was around me was doing it. It was the opposite. Everyone around me was renting. And I grew up in New York originally. And so I don't really see many opportunities for my friends in New York to be purchasing anything. Like you said, it's like $2,000 is a good deal for rent in the city, at least. But, here where I live in Colorado, there are reasonable prices, and I kick myself on a regular basis for not investing in real estate over the last 10 years, because my friends who have done really, really well. But, it's just kind of been this societal thing where, there's just too much uncertainty, and, there's just been, the awareness of what happened to, the last generation, and kind of like seeing these figures, of like finances. And like Don said, we don't really have this nest egg there. And so, having a rental unit where I'm paying a lease, it might be more expensive, but at the end of the day, there's much less risk because I'm not going to feel like I just put all this money and then all of a sudden get taken away. But I mean, at the end of the day, it would have been a good idea. It's just kind of, how things shake out. And then going back to also what you were saying, Mark, about the entertainment industry. I work in the entertainment industry as well. And right now I'm working with some folks. We're doing some event production. And because of COVID, obviously, it's like you're saying, we're doing this mixed platform where we're trying to do some of these charity events where we've got some tables, with, some multi-course meals and, drink service, and then have these live streams. And, I've been streaming concerts. I've been streaming concerts for years, and there's just it's just so much more fun to be there. But I think that I also notice, I've got a virtual reality plugged into my PlayStation now. I recently picked that up. And, I was reading an article the other day actually about how the billionaire class thinks that they don't really need to act on like environmental policies and things like that because virtual reality is just going to like suck people away. And I think that that's ridiculous. I think that we need to preserve the environment. And I think that there's still, maximum efforts that need to, be made in this world out here. But I think that as these virtual reality technologies, advance further, I think that we're going to see a lot of more of this mixed media and a lot more situations where people have the opportunity to go to the concert, but they prefer to do it at home virtual because of, money reasons or whatever it might be. Concert tickets go up and these units, as Eric said, we'll be able to rent them, surely. I haven't really seen too many of these VR things on the rental market, but I'm sure that exists. Most of these things you can rent, as Eric said.
We're even seeing it to some degree on the conference level. I'm sure you're seeing that as well, Brent, because I know that just this last 2 weeks, we're seeing it on the conference level as well, because I know just this last 2 weeks, I saw 2 conferences where basically I was using this same platform that Sharif is using for our forum here and everything, where they were basically doing a conference. It was out of the African-American population here in North Carolina, but they were doing some Black History Month kind of events. One was an economic type conference where they were encouraging folks to do economic development and things of that nature. And the other was a similar type deal, but in another part of the state. But definitely I was using StreamYard in order to have that platform. So we're seeing more people even using these platforms to have these kind of conferences as well. So I agree with you that that's something we're going to see more and more of.
Yeah, and I've seen like, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just talking to a friend a couple nights ago about an artist that we like, and he's got his whole art space with that he puts live music and things like that, and now he's got it all on virtual reality networks so that you can get on your Oculus and go be there. And I think that when like you're saying, it's not just for entertainment. How soon until residential real estate or even commercial real estate companies provide you with a virtual reality set, while you're looking for a house, so you don't need to go to a house every day. You can look at 10 houses in one day over the course of 500 miles. Yeah, I bet.
They're already doing it.
There you go.
Yeah, I know here they're already doing it, because when COVID happened, a number of the apartment complexes, that's how they were showing their apartments. They were literally showing them using virtual reality and having people get a tour before they even got into the building. As a matter of fact, I was watching somebody recently on one of these networks, and they were literally saying that they got their job, took their job, and everything was done in terms of their getting their job online. I think that their first in-person encounter with the job was after they were hired, after they had gone through the whole process. So everything from the interview to everything else was done pretty much online. So like I said, they're now hired and now are having their first experiences with the company. So I think we're going to see more and more of that.
I hope we do, frankly. I didn't really talk about that when I came in, but I'll talk about it now. I have been in work from home environment. I raised my kids working from Sun Microsystems in Colorado. I worked from home for the last, until Sun became Oracle. And it wasn't acceptable then. It is now necessary. And COVID isn't going to change this. Our post-COVID era has changed the way we interact with one another. I happen to have an interest in the music industry too. And one of my friends, when I went COVID positive and began my journey with long haul COVID, I found that I was relieved that the musicians that I love and miss seeing in real life started live streaming concerts, because it A, extended the audience, B, extended the love of music to people that would not have met it otherwise. So a lot of good is coming from the post-COVID pandemic era requirements for community.
But John, what do you say to those that are going almost on the opposite end of that? Because I've got a very good friend of mine. Sharif actually knows this gentleman because he was also and still is with IBM TV, but he's a funk musician, comes out of that whole funk environment. I mean, my music interest is more blues and jazz, but he definitely comes out of that funk environment. But he's also very particular about the way that he works with his fellow musicians, and he's got musicians that are scattered throughout. So like I said, some of his musicians are in New York, some of his musicians, I want to say, are even in the Texas area. So he's actually concerned about that. And like I said, I know he would love to be out on the road touring and doing things of that nature, but he wants to be at a certain level before he even starts doing that and everything. And I don't know that he feels comfortable yet with his own comfortability with the technology that's out there and everything, or even with his comfortability with the engineers that he uses and everything. So I know that there's a lot of folks that are like that. He's not the only one that I know that are not as comfortable yet with the consumer-based technology that's out there to get in these kind of environments, but they also have tremendous talent. So what do you say to folks like him?
I say to folks like him, don't let the music die. And when you allow the technology to be an inhibitor to how you produce art, then you're letting the music die. And I'm saying get strong. The best example in the use of technology is a Bay Area musician by the name of Aki Kumar. AkiKumar.com. Aki is a failed business analyst in the Bay Area. He was a real business analyst, but he's an amazing blues, and he defined his own era of music. He's the only Hindi blues artist that I've encountered that does blues. Well, does it? So he was accepted and picked up by a Sony India record label. Mm-hmm. He now brings live streams of his technology. He participates and collaborates with artists worldwide all the time, and he travels. Mm-hmm. Before COVID, he traveled the world. Now he travels the world virtually. They do a lot of work at the local Piedmont Piano Company, where they'll do a very small live event, but it's broadcast worldwide. I encourage people to get involved in that. I managed a funk band in Ohio, and they were old school music, and the band basically hardly doesn't exist anymore because we're used to the gig economy. Don't let the music die. If you got music in you, you got to create it. Technology enables it. Why let it stop you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Eric. Yes.
Yeah. So a lot of you have mentioned VR, and one of the things I envision in the future for concerts is virtual reality for the audience. Mm-hmm. For the band or whatever, you don't have to travel anymore. No more tour bus, none of those things. No more ticking out the rigs and getting all these, none of those things, because you just have it in your studio and that's it, one place. And immediately you can do VR around the world. For the audience member, every time you put on that VR glass, and it's going to be smaller, it's going to be more convenient, and it's going to be, less lag time and everything. You're going to be standing right there on the front stage, right in front of the band on the front stage. You can look at the band member. You can walk around and you can see them like a 3D sort of a thing. You can smile at them and they can smile back at you, because that's what the computer and the AI and all these other things can do. And you do all that, you have your own beer. You don't have to pay $20 beers. You don't have to be groped at. You don't have to have people pouring beer on your back. None of those things. Yeah, everything is going to be done in your home, and you don't have to worry about it. The music is going to be into your earbuds or whatever you're wearing, so your neighbors aren't going to worry about you playing loud music at all hours of the day. And you can do this at any time too, because it's VR. You can do it at any time you want. You don't have to go somewhere and then walk 1.5 miles to some stadium to go there, carrying your sack of whatever and all these other miserable things that you have to do that people think was fun, but it's not fun. Okay. People think, oh, Woodstock was such a great thing. No, it's a pain in the butt, and, for us older folks, it really is a pain in the butt. I don't want to walk around and sludging in the mud and all that. Some people like Burning Man, then they'll do that once a year, but you don't want to do that every time. I like a nice seat.
Yeah, actually, Burning Man has actually just done what you're talking about. Burning Man went virtual this year and did a whole virtual thing.
Exactly.
And the folks in, I forget the name of the big festival that's in Basel, the Basel one that's in Florida and also in several other areas. They also went virtual as well this year. So I don't know if they're going virtual in 2021, but I know last year in 2020, they did a whole virtual version. And I'm imagining they're going to do the same thing this time. But Eric, my question for you is, do you think that, because some people like that experience of, being jostled and bumped and all of that experience. I agree with you that as I've gotten older, it's less something that I desire, but I know that definitely when you were younger and everything, some folks like that part of the experience. So I guess my question for Brett and you also, Eric, and even you, Don, is do you think that the virtual reality will ever get to the point that you can add that element if that's what you want, that you can add that element of being bumped or having the stuff spilled on you and the rest of it?
Well, invite 10 of your friends over and have them bump you. Okay, at least you're going to get groped. You're going to get groped by your friends. Okay, you're not going to get groped by some stranger. You're gonna, nobody's going to pour beer over your head. Okay, nobody likes that part. Okay, but you get sloshed with water, and beer and drinks and all that, and nobody likes that part. You're not going to get into any fights or anything of that sort. And here's another thing: is always. The bottom line is also the economics, right? Mm-hmm. For the band, you can do something like this. You pay the fee to get onto this system, right, to the network or whatever, but you can reach out to 1 million listeners. Okay, what stadium, what area can you get 1 million people to pay you, right? And now you can do this. Maybe you charge $10 a person instead of like a freaking $100 or $500 now that you have to pay to get something. You don't have to do that anymore. You can get $10. People will pay $10 for a 2-hour concert. Okay. Oh, yeah. But a $500 concert, this is again, what's happened is that when certain costs goes higher and higher and higher, right? Then once it gets to a certain level, new technology, new means will come in to give you a cheaper thing. Think about what movies did to live entertainment. Movies is basically, it's been around for about 100 years. Movies is basically live entertainment, been able to create it for the greater audience. And even today, a movie is around $15, which is a hell of a lot cheaper than going to see the theater or the opera or whatever at $150 or $50 minimum, right? For a theater ticket, it's $150 minimum. If you want to go see Hamilton, $250, $500 or whatever, and if you don't get it, you don't get it. Okay, now it's no big deal. You can go to a movie theater, and movies are going to move to something where it's going to be $1.50 instead of $15.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things we saw movies doing recently, and I think that it'll continue even after we get out of the COVID pandemic and everything, is they started doing more of what I call the movie experience. So it wasn't that you just went to the movie theater. You went to those movie theaters that were also dining establishments and a lot of other things. So there were several of those that were starting to crop up and starting to do a lot of business around the area. So I know that they gave you that full experience.
Yeah,
even those though. Like the Alamo Drafthouse, they're one of the more prominent companies like that, and they just filed for bankruptcy the other day. And of course, COVID has probably some relevance there. But I think that it's kind of hasty to kind of compare the live music experience to the movie experience, and even to like theater or opera, because I think that one aspect of the live music experience that's quintessential is this interaction between audience and performers, and I think that that's been the biggest downside of some of this lockdown stuff, for people who like to watch these concerts. Because even when I'm at home streaming a concert that there are attendees there, there's just a significant difference between the band's energy when they're in front of a group of people and they're not. But then to go on further, something that some of these bands and musicians that I listen to have started doing since all of these lockdowns is they'll have these streams, and they'll have on the walls, they'll have all of these different little like TV things on the walls that they're like projecting, and you can see all these audience members that are dancing at home in their living room, and it totally does bring. And so it's like, I would love to be able to go see concerts in the future and be there in person and still have that, and so I do think that there's some interesting developments, but I don't think that I don't think that people are just going to all of a sudden stop going to concerts. I don't think that
I agree with you on that. And there's actually a group that was
It's in a
There's
connection.
actually a group that was doing exactly what you're talking about, and they were doing it quite well. And I think they're going in their second or third year, but they started in the pandemic. But I don't know how familiar y'all are with the Daybreaker crowd, but it's those folks. I know those of you in San Francisco are familiar with it. But it's those folks that literally would take over a building and have those dance parties and everything. But they moved those into a digital space. So like one of the founders, Rana, and I want to say it's her husband now and everything, and some of her friends, they started doing the Daybreaker day parties, and they did those for like about 6 or 7 months. And it's kind of what you just described. It was literally a global community of dance enthusiasts, and then they would bring in some of the top old school performers. Like I know they had Gloria Gaynor and the Village People and a number of others, and they would just do like one big virtual dance party that was using Zoom and some of this high energy technology and all of that. So definitely that was really classical, the way that they did that, and they're still continuing to do that during this era and everything. So I'm seeing more people that are adapting ways to engage the community, and that's what we need more of, is ways to engage the community.
An artist out of Bangladesh, coordinated a global compilation. It was basically to encourage people during the COVID pandemic. He collaborated with artists around the world. He had artists from Canada, Europe, Bangladesh, India, 3 or 4 states across the United States. They were all they created a song virtually, and they share it virtually. We haven't got to the point of concert experience yet, but the collaboration, absolutely. I would like to see more people coming together, like what you're talking about. I did that in the Bay Area. We did a virtual concert before Zoom existed at Compression Labs Incorporated, and we did it with Pinchas Zuckerman and Itzhak Perlman. They were in 2 different locations. They had local presence there, and then we had little satellite parties around the world. And it was a fascinating party. It could work. You could get bumped. You could get wine spilled on you, what have you. But I think we just have not evolved the way that we connect when not in person, and I think we need to.
Yeah, that was another thought that I was having also, is with virtual reality, there's not much like a social aspect to it, like a lot of video games. I mean, and there is, don't get me wrong, like when you're playing like Call of Duty or something like that, and the way you have your headset and can talk to people. And at least the virtual reality games that I've played, though, they don't even really have that. But I think that when you can actually have like a virtual reality game or experience, where you're able to go to the concert, and like Eric said, you could move around, you could be front row, because like a lot of these virtual reality games, you'll see this little kind of like white circle, and you push a button and you go over there. And so in theory, you could go up on stage and be like looking over the guitarist's shoulders and things like that. But when you can actually do that and then also see your friends who are at the concert doing the same kind of things, I think that will really, create, that'll be that evolution that you're talking about, John.
So,
Isn't part of the problem, though, that we don't have any way to really, I won't say monetize, but also figure out what the audience is? Because like I said, I can tell you that there were 1 million people at those Daybreaker parties, and they can estimate that and everything based on their Zoom numbers and everything. But definitely, I know when I've done these conferences, including the 2 that I just did, or even when I've had part of networks, and there's several streaming networks. I mentioned IBM TV, but there's also Digiminers, which is Sri Srinivasan's group, and a couple of others that are out there. But unlike the Arbitron and the Nielsen's and a number of other things that used to exist, where you could figure out, how many homes you were hitting, or at least have a fairly good estimate, I don't know yet that the digital virtual world and this virtual consumption has gotten to that point yet. So I don't know. Maybe y'all know of something that I know of, but that I don't know of, I should say. But I was just wondering, because that's one of the things that I think that is needed is some sort of metric so that we can actually figure out, are we just as the old saying goes, is the tree falling in the forest and nobody hears it, or are people actually hearing what we're doing in this virtual space?
How do we know it's in people, and how do we know it's effective? I think you're absolutely
like beside that, I just want to add, because education, I think is a big industry. Education, tourism, as well as sports, as Simon discussing about India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. I think cricket is very famous, but now cricket and this kind of sports is moving, but crowd and other things not happening. And I think, I don't know, like when we go for the like the crowd, fully crowded stadium and these things, but what your analysis on that particular point? What will happen this education, tourism, as well as this sports industry? What kind of technology can be integrated this kind of industry? Because these are very big and huge amount of people has engagement.
I mean, well, we saw some of it in the sports industry. We saw some of it during the NBA and the NFL season, where they would try to bring out these different kind of images. I think some of them are better than others. I actually, personally, I don't know how the rest of the panel feels, but I prefer when we're actually seeing people's videos and seeing the actual screens and everything. I'm not a big fan of the cut ups and the things of that nature, because that just seems a little bit on the tacky side to me. But that's just my personal opinion. I prefer actually watching the people, cheer and yell from their video homes and everything, whether they're watching a basketball game or a football game or whatever. But I do know it does pull from the experience, because like I said, if you're used to watching a game and you're used to seeing say the San Francisco 49ers and it's a full auditorium and a full stadium, and you're sitting there and there's like a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand people, it doesn't have the same impact, at least in my mind. But maybe Brent and Donna may think differently.
What I was gonna say is you might be careful. You might want to be careful what you wish for, because I see artificial intelligence. That'd be a really easy thing for them to do. Is just to like feed it all sorts of footage from past games, and then just fill those seats with fake people that are animated and seem real. So be careful what you wish for.
It's like making Gladiator, right? The movie Gladiator. They didn't have 1,000 people in a non-existent stadium. They just CGI'd it and plopped it there. Well, you can do the same thing.
My son is has qualified for the Olympics that are
right
this year.
Excellent.
Challenge is he qualified a year ago when COVID struck and the Olympics were canceled. I want an Olympic experience, but I am a COVID long haul survivor. I can't travel. I can't go to the Olympics, but I guarantee you, when my son, if the Olympics go forward, when my son is running, I want real now experience. And I want from where I am. And it's all about world competition. We want to be able to, I think production quality for these types of events needs to take a different form. You could explore the richness of a local. You could tell the stories of the athletes as they begin to run. You could tell stories, and you can cut to the crowds, and you can see them supporting their candidate. You can feel and hear them screaming and feel the excitement. I want that.
Yeah, definitely. That's the thing, is that the cost of technology 10 years, 20 years ago, the cost of technology for television cameras were in the tens of $50,000 for a good camera that you would use in the Olympics, right? The microphone and all these other things and the setup. You need staff to crew to set it up and all these other stuff. Now you can just slap on a dozen GoPros all over the place, and there'll be the number of cameras will 10x, and the price will 100th the price. So it's even cheaper, and people will get to pick and choose which camera they want to watch from, and they're going to have all the different. You're going to have drones flying right behind the runners. You're going to have swimming drones underneath to watch the swimmers from the bottom. You're going to have everything like that you could never even imagine, 10 years ago. And that's what's going to happen, and it's going to be even better experience for the viewers, and the athletes are going to enjoy it too, because they know that they're going to have the intimacy with the parents, with their immediate friends or close friends, and the audience, the fans in general, who get to see them on a more personal and a more experiential level than you would ever be able to see before.
Yeah, no, I agree. I did have one quick question that was raising my mind, and as y'all were talking about this, I was actually thinking about friends of mine that use DoorDash. They use, and actually some of them even work for DoorDash, Grubhub, and then they work for Uber and all of these other outlets and everything in terms of our gig economy, because we definitely have a gig economy in our society and everything. Do any of you fear, and this is actually for you, Sharif, as well, that we'll get to the point, and I think COVID actually exposed this to some degree, where we don't necessarily need to get out of our house as much as we used to. I mean, part of going to a concert was actually the experience of going to the concert as well as going to the athletic event. Like if you had a kid that was playing football or soccer and things of that nature, that was part of the experience, was going to that. Whereas now, literally, your groceries can come to you. I'm thinking about like GoPuff, everything can pretty much come to you. You don't have to leave home for hardly anything. I would even argue, and this is coming back to Eric, if you are in that illicit category and you want to get the your drugs and your sex, that could even come to you as well because of the way our economy is going also. So I was wondering, do you think that we're going too far in that kind of consumer base that is so home-based?
I don't think we're going too far, and I think there are further that we would go that we can't even imagine. That I right now I can't imagine. Right now, what you're talking about is, oh, we get food from a restaurant, we get food from a grocery. I buy something from Target or whatever, and it gets dropped off into my front door, and I pick it up. Who knows what the future is? I think Brent already talked about 3D printing of food. I don't have to buy actual food in the future anymore. I just buy the toner, right? I don't know what you want to call it, but essentially the toner, and maybe different companies will make different types, right? And then you just pour the stuff into the whatever of your 3D printer, and then you go to Chef Jose Andres's version of certain thing, and you press, I'll take that recipe. And then that recipe will be printed out, and I get that, okay? Or I get Chef, I don't know, a whole bunch of different names. That's going to be the future, is that I will rent the recipe from the chefs, and my 3D printer / cooking device will make that for me, and I get to experience exactly what that chef would have made, except I cooked it, quote unquote, cooked it on my printer / cooking device, whatever you want to call it, and it might taste just as good. Who knows, or it could be pretty bland. It could be something no different than what the military eats with their MREs. It could be that. So,
but
I mean, that's probably what
I guess the question I've got on that is, can we go too far with that? Because I mean, I can think of like movies like Soylent Green and a couple of other ones where we had that kind of economy going, and nobody knew exactly what they were getting, or the government was in charge a lot worse than we thought they were in charge. So I was just wondering, can we go too far in that?
We've already gone. We've already gone. 10,000 years ago, when we mastered agriculture, we have already gone too far, right? I mean, once we already did that, we already took that one step. This step that I'm describing is probably a smaller step than what we did back then, which was a fundamental change in how humans lived. So,
I frankly look forward to continuing the immersive technology. Have any of you had COVID, or know people really close to you that have?
I know people that I haven't had it, but I have close friends that have had it. Several close friends that have had it.
I'm the founder of COVID Center of Excellence now, and I'm not a founder because I love dealing with health issues. It's because in May last year I got COVID. I've been to the hospital 13 times since last May, saving my life. Can you go too far with the technology? No. Technology hasn't gone far enough, and we need to do more, because the reality is, people did DoorDash because they had to isolate at home. I did DoorDash because I couldn't freaking get out of bed. I mean, I'm a single woman here. If I can't cook, the food's got to come somehow for me to keep eating. So immersive technology that allows you to feel okay whether you're in the hospital or you're in your home, that's necessary. The ability to return to work, guess what? You can't recover from COVID if you don't have a job. You can't get a job if you don't have the ability to live comfortably. We need to do a lot more to push the bar with technology and interaction, for safe interaction and for the recovery of our world.
Oh yeah, and I definitely think we need safe interaction, and we need more interaction, because that's the aspect that I find lacking right now, is the interaction part. So I would agree with you on that. I was just wondering, because I've had friends of mine that that's their concern, is that you're going too far with too many government controls and the government getting too involved in the aspect of it. Not so much private.
I don't know where the government is involved in any of these things. I mean,
right.
this is all consumer driven. I mean, the only thing I would like to make sure that the government actually does get into it to understand what's happening, so that abuse doesn't occur, fraud doesn't occur, and and other things like that. But right now, I don't see the government telling me that I can't order something online or whatever.
I think that DARPA and other agencies that deal with these types of technologies and advances, I think that they're years, if not decades, ahead of us in certain ways. But I also think that with this idea of can we go too far, I think that there are plenty of people in society who this type of immersive technology and these types of advancements do more to repulse certain people than to attract them. And I think that when you start creating these options for people who can enjoy concert experiences from their own home, and you have people like Eric who just would rather do that, then you have people like myself who would still rather go out. And I mean, a lot of times, I'll go to these big concerts, big touring acts, I'd go see Fish and these Grateful Dead projects and stuff. And, a lot of times when, I know that there's tickets on sale, I just wait to get to the parking lot, because I know that there's going to be tickets in the parking lot that'll be even cheaper, And so I think that there's like this relationship between like the true fans of the, and how much they're actually willing to pay, and then the people that like come because they want to be a part of it. And then those people though that come and want to be a part of it, they're going to stay at home, and those prices will drop and things become more accessible as things become more accessible and more appealing. And so I think that things will kind of like spread out. And I think that there's nothing really wrong inherently with more options for the most part. I think that, certain oversights are necessary and stuff. Right. And going back to what Sharif was saying as well about tourism and sports and things like that, for sports, I see all of this still where it's like, how many chess clubs, or chess championships are going to be in person in the future if we can do this digitally? If we can have end-to-end secure, communication between computers, why not have, these Russian and American and Chinese chess players just play each other in these world champion tournaments from home, and sure, I don't think everything will just transition that way. But I think that, they're going to be more, and I think that we might even see certain things that we didn't really consider sports as, becoming sports, kind of like how the Olympics has adopted, like the Winter Olympics adopted snowboarding and, these other things that kind of became, more accepted, and before they were just kind of seen as hobbies. And I think that we'll see more of that, some of these video games, we might see, some of these weird, strange video games that people like to play online, and, taking some weird shapes where there's like these, and they already have it, but it's just not as like, unless you're actually in those communities, you're not really seeing it as much. And so I think that some of that stuff might gain some momentum. I see that video games, in the last year, there was more money in video games than like music and movies combined, from what I understand. And so I think that that's really, really something to think about, because I think, you were talking about, can we have this concert experience at home where we're still bumping into people and things like that? And I think that, I see video games as this major propellant for these haptic, devices that, because people want to play these video games where they have these sensory things. But then I see workplaces adopting these things where, why have 10 different people in 10 different warehouses when you can have one person with some big, robotic machine where they tap into and they log into, this warehouse and then that warehouse, and they're controlling some other machine down there through this exoskeleton. And, you don't need, there's one person spread out over all these different countless locations.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, potentially, yeah, but yeah, I mean, exactly, and it just, yeah, exactly. But my thought is if they're like stocking shelves, to control, but still, yeah, like you said, they might
that's
not.
That's already happening. There's a company that does forklifts, robotic forklifts, And the benefit of a robotic forklift is that there's no driver, so you don't have to build a forklift with a form factor for a human being to be there. Okay, so you can be more compact. So that means you can squeeze more shelves into a warehouse instead of having, 45 inches, 60 inches, or whatever between shelves, so that you can move a forklift around. You can half the size of the forklift and then half the size of the walkways or the areas between the shelves. So you can cram more. B is that you're not going to have a driver there that could probably get in an accident. Here in the United States, you get about 100 people, 100 forklift drivers or people near them dying every year. Okay, you're not going to have any more deaths by forklifts. Okay, and C, this is 24/7. This is the forklift goes up and down, puts it into aisle 3, shelf 14, whatever, however they decided to enumerate that, and you do this day in, day out, and there's no you don't have
Probably
to pay
automated.
the worker. It is all automated, and that's exactly how the warehousing is going to go in the future, because it's not people should not aspire to be a warehouse worker. Okay. Why are you aspiring to be a warehouse worker? You can do things better. You can, and talking about this, a lot of what you're talking about here, we talk about here, seems to show that there's more isolation and less intimacy. And I think actually it's going to be the other way around. I don't need intimacy in buying groceries. I don't need intimacy in getting a dinner from a restaurant. Okay, the intimacy can be done in-house with people that I'm intimate with, with my family, with the friends and all that. Those will still be around. We will still go out to go do things. Okay, experiential things. I will still physically fly to Paris, to Malaysia or wherever. I will do that. Okay, so that's not going to change. I'm not going to wear a VR to experience Paris. I will physically go there. Okay, but those are the things that I'm willing to pay for to do that. Okay, and in a way, I'm renting. Okay, I'm not buying. I'm renting my 2 weeks in Paris, my 2 weeks in Malaysia, and all that. Okay, but that's what I want to save my money for. Okay, I don't need to do the experience of standing in line at a grocery store. I remember pre-COVID, I went to a Whole Foods here in San Francisco. God dang, the line was like 16 people long for every one of the the cash registers, and I go like, who the F wants to do this? Why are people standing in line waiting 45 minutes just to pay money for this, when they could have done this online and just have it delivered at 7:30 or whatever, and in the meantime they can do something. That's the thing, is that I see it as an opportunity cost. There's an opportunity cost that I'm losing standing in line waiting to pay for something.
I've got a question for Brent based on what you're saying, though, and everything. Because I remember, like I said, I'm 58, about to be 59 in July. My younger brother he just turned 50, and he's about to be 51. But I remember when he was young, one of the greatest places to go, I'll just put it bluntly, to go pick up ladies and everything, was the grocery store. And I mean, literally, you would go there because you knew that the ladies would be there later in the evening and things of that nature, after the clubs and things of that along those lines. Of course, there was also the clubs. A lot of these are social environments. So somebody that's closer to your age, how is this virtual reality going to work in the dating environment? And like I said, I'm a single man of 58, but like I said, I've got different kind of ways that I date. But I'm just saying, like, for your son, who's an Olympic athlete and everything, I'm wondering how this whole virtual reality is going to impact their dating situation, because it seems to be that's one of the places of interference. I agree with what you're saying, Eric, that if you're in those environments where you're already in those, whatever those models are of family, meaning that you've got your wife, your significant other, your kids, and all of that. But there's a whole lot of the population that isn't in that environment.
Now I'm depressed, because for my son, I don't worry. He's got a profile. He's got girls going crazy for him because he's an athlete. But I didn't realize that if I went to the grocery store instead of doing Instacart, that I might have actually met a boyfriend already. That makes
I think those days of meeting someone at a grocery store for that kind of thing is kind of going from the Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan kind of a love story rom-com to kind of a creepy thing. Okay, it's turning into more of a American Psycho kind of a creepiness kind of a thing. The future for dating and things of that sort will be more of the meetup type of thing, where you go for a common experience, and people are physically there for the experience, and they're there as a group, and then you meet them in a more general situation with other people there of common interests, and there's a sense of security, a sense of commonality. And not some person trying to hit me up or something like that.
Facebook is the new bar. I mean, Facebook dating is where you go if you want to have a bar experience. But
or Tinder.
I don't know. I don't.
Tinder
Yeah,
is not it.
I think that like
I'm
my
single.
generation. Yeah, I mean, but like of my generation, of the millennials, I think that most millennials have downloaded Tinder at some point. Whether or not we like it. But yeah, exactly. I mean, and so I think that, like, to answer your question too, Mark, I think that kind of like what Eric was saying, it's not as much as that. I mean, like, yes, there's the degree that it's creepy, but I think that the reason why it's creepy, and I don't think that it's necessarily creepy. I think that we all kind of, it's like when I'm in the supermarket and I see a cute girl, I'm not friendly because I don't want to be creepy. But I think that, in past generations, it was much more, normal. And, I think that my generation was the first generation to really grow up on the internet, with chat rooms and all this kind of crap, where I would get out of school and I'd go home and I'd sign into AOL Instant Messenger. And, that was how I was keeping track of my friends. And, and so I think that because of that transition that my generation has seen, it creates an environment where a lot of people in my generation feel a lot more insecure when they're trying to create, strike conversations with strangers. I think that Eric's right that, these types of meetups, there's like co-ed bowling groups and things like that, people like to do. But I think that even further, I think that, like, these dating sites, when I was younger, I think that it was much more of like these dating sites were for like older people that were having trouble meeting people. And now it's like totally different. All my friends are on Hinge or on Tinder or on Bumble. Everyone's on something, it seems like, just to kind of keep the line in the water, and I think that that's totally pretty normal. And so I think that because a lot of people are satisfying that in this way where it's so much easier, you spend a little time, you create this app, boom, 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 and then you've got people you're talking to. And then when you're going out, you're not as like, it's not like, oh, I'm going to the supermarket and this is where I do this. It's, and people, I think, are still kind of open to interactions. And don't get me wrong. I mean, like when I was younger, and this is still like before, the internet really took over, when we had like dial-ups, we would go out. I remember when I was a kid, when I was like 13 or 14 years old, we would like, go walk around and try to meet people, you go to the mall and meet girls or whatever it was when we were like young kids. And, but I think that it just kind of like, it's so weird how society's changed so much in this like way of like just high, judgment for like wanting to like engage, it's like, it's people are just very mistrusting, and I think that like the news and all that stuff has something to do with it. There's just so much of this sensationalized stuff where it's like, most women on the street, a guy that's like talking to them is just like a threat instantly. And it's just where it's like it's not that like it's like I just avoid the situation nowadays, because it's like I know that like the women in my generation a lot of times are just so on guard, and a lot of times for good reason, because a lot of people have been assaulted and abused and things like that. So it's like it's not even like a knock in that, but it's just an awareness of the fact that that my generation's not. It's different. We're more of like these online digital natives, as like Tom Ross has put it.
Digital dating's real, but also the reality is, if we're going to date anybody, we get to know them longer. And I'm going to for sure do a background check on LinkedIn to make sure that they're real before I ever agree to read them.
Yes.
Oh yeah, you definitely have to do those background checks. That's for both women and men, because like I said, there's all kinds of fake profiles that are out there, and everything that are out there existing. And even sometimes they use some of this consumption tools in order to even get you involved in everything. I can't tell you how many times, like I said, I'm an older gentleman of 58 that's single, and I can't tell you how many times I've had young ladies, or not even young ladies, but ladies in their 40s and 50s reach out to me and then try to use what I call the Bitcoin switch, meaning that they want you to send them money in Bitcoin
I mean,
and everything, you know. And I'm going like, nope, not having it, not falling for it.
I
Yes.
swear to goodness, I swear, dating now on the dating apps, they're using artificial intelligence to create the minimum for profile pictures for the guy that is a widow that is in the military. Or,
Is that I don't get to see what women see on like Tinder and all that, so I don't know what is the
don't-
prototypical and the better type of whatever. But Tinder is fundamentally a wrong thing, right? Because you're always scanning for the next person, because you're always swiping, you're always scanning for the next person. So
right.
Tinder would work better if once you pick someone, you don't get to pick anyone until you actually go through with the whole date.
See, I
And then
don't
you
agree,
have to
because I think the best part about Tinder is that, like, most of my friends who use Tinder, it's like you use it for a little bit of time and it's got like that, like, you know, initial excitement to it, and then you're like, man, I really don't like this. You know, I don't enjoy
Yeah,
just like
what
pursuing
you're
these
liking is the picture.
connections
I
that.
mean, it's
Well, no, but I'm saying that, like, the deeper, what resonates on a deeper level. I think that, you know, because I mean, like, my generation is Generation ADD, you know, in my opinion. Screw all this millennial talk. And so I think that it's like really natural for people in these younger generations who have so many options bombarding us at all times to want to experiment and try new things and meet new people and see what we like and what we don't like. And so people, you know, it's like there's billions of people out there. So it's like how quickly, you know, it's like my parents or my grandparents' generation, the way that they would like pick someone and stick with them through thick and thin, that doesn't happen anymore. You got to find someone that you really are willing to do that, because, you know, everyone knows deep down that it's like, I can find 10 more just like this, you know, if I really, you know, try to. At least that's the, you know, assumption
Yeah.
that we all have. And
You're
so I
No,
think
Brent,
that with Tinder, it's almost helpful to kind of, because it creates these superficial connections that are really not, you know, they don't have any long-term satisfaction. And so I think that, you know, for me, it's like, you know, Tinder, you know, it's like people say Hinge is this app to, you know, that you download to delete, but it was like Tinder is the app that everyone deletes, you know, because eventually you're just like, man, this is not what I'm looking for, you know. And so I think that there's something good to be said about that. You know, I think that, you know, that long term for this generation, you know, I think that can benefit us. I think that there's some kind of this counterintuitive thing where you give someone what they don't want, what they think they want, so they realize that that's not actually what they do want. I think there's something to be said about that.
now, one of the things that I was going to actually commend Brent's generation that I've noticed, and I would say anybody that's, I would argue maybe 35 and 40 on down. So I definitely think that Donna's son falls in that range and everything. Is this seems to be, despite what happened in the last elections and everything, I would argue that this new generation coming up is one of the most diverse and socially acceptable generations that I've ever seen, because like I said, they don't really seem to care whether you're black, white, purple, gray, or the straight or gay or whatever. They just try to deal with people on a one-on-one basis, kind of what you're describing, Brent. And I've seen that from a number of folks in this generation, I'd say of 35 and under. And maybe that's just wishful thinking on my part, but when I've had conversations, it seems to be very much what I've observed, and it seems to be very much of a more acceptable generation.
I think that it has to do with.
Yes. One point, just I want to add specifically, like when we have too much of dependency on technology, especially our youth, like from my childhood, I can remember when we play cricket or play footballs, we develop our leadership quality, our team building approach, and many interesting things from our schools, from our university. We do debating, we organizing debating championship, international competitions. So that's kind of things give us a different kind of leaderships and qualities and other things. But I don't know, when I discuss with the youth communities, especially when I as a teacher I engage with the many students, I find they are very much self-centric. They do not love to do a lot of works. Even I can remember from my childhood, we grow in a big families, as well as when I go to schools, we have a very big friend still. My school friends, we are working together. Even my university friends from around the world, when we arrange debating championship, 3,000 students from around the world, they join in the debating competitions. And when we organize this kind of event, it gives us different skills, different things. you don't think that when we have too much of different dependency on technology, science, and other things, we are too much of self-centered? We do not know how to. I don't know. It's my observation, but you
I
can analyze it.
completely, I would disagree pretty hard there, because I think that when we have all of this technology, it makes you feel like people are watching everything you do. And so I think that there's this more of this awareness that everything I do is social in nature, and that I'm showing, and then the leaders lead by example, and so I think that there's no reason, it's not like people aren't going to still be organizing things online, like we were talking about Meetup and things like that. There's still all sorts of that kind of stuff. These are human nature, and I think that we're just using different tools to accomplish these means. I think that the self-centered aspect as well. I think that, and it goes back to what I was going to say about what Mark was saying about our generation. I think that our generation kind of has this common enemy, where it's like the system that is too big to, where it's like the older generations, Generation X, was similar, to us. I think that, they saw this system that was kind of like not in their control. It was the boomers have kind of, been the last generation that really, and then the golden generation, it was great for them, and America was all in this upward spiral, but now things are not the same. And I think that there's much more of this defensive nature, and I think that people kind of congregate with people who, it's almost like trauma bonding, in our generation, which is not very good. And so I think that is what yields this kind of self-centered aspect, is defensiveness. And it's not just the United States, it's like in all these different places. And I think that there's a lot of places, and in the past, it's not like things have been perfect up until now. But I think that it's just kind of like, we're at this age of information overload. So it's like this heightened awareness that it's like you're dealing with that problem here, but then if I go over there, I'm dealing with the problem still. It's not, you can't like escape this, and it's inescapable. And so I think that, I see that like there is a lot of leadership, but it's much more of like this, and it's not necessarily just self-centered. I see a lot of it as not self-centered, but I see it as more of like related to like social justice movements, when you're looking at Generation Z, than like chess clubs, and because they're actually seeing that like the world is going to shit and crumbling around them, and that they're the generation that needs to do something because everyone else has failed to do something. And so I think that the type of leadership, it's not like it's like I don't see that, I personally, and I'm not Generation Z, I'm a millennial, but I see that it's like, what's the value in like being the basketball coach or the basketball captain when there's like, look out the window, there's like people rioting, and the cops are killing, kids that are walking home from school in my city where I live, just a few miles from me. This Elijah McClain is real close to me. And so, I think that there's, and I mean, then you look like 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and you look at people like Abby Hoffman, and Timothy Leary, these thought leaders of their generation. I mean, like, yeah, you have the athletes and things like that, but I mean, I think that there's different types of leadership. And so I think that, the people that want to gain those types of leadership still will be able to, but I don't think that, doing it in a digital format is going to prevent that. I think it's just going to be different styles of leadership. When older generations try to lead the younger generations through completely different cultural means, it's not as effective. And so I think that it's like keeping near to the ground and actually doing things that are relevant to the situation is the most helpful. I think that assuming that like what worked for me and what worked for this group is going to be what works for everyone else is kind of a false assumption, in my opinion. And then just kind of,
how much do you think that this plays into the whole concept of the cancel culture? Because that's also something going on, and I'm wondering how much of the consumer economy that we're talking about plays into this whole cancel culture, where you kind of like cancel people because of their viewpoints and everything. So
I've been canceling culturing way before cancel culture was a fad.
I think there's nothing wrong
back
with
in
it.
Back in the 80s, Exxon had that Valdez oil spill in the 80s. Okay,
I remember it.
And I was pissed, and I said, I'm never going to buy gas from Exxon ever again. And I don't. Back in the 80s, Nike was using slave labor or whatever in, I don't know where it was, Indonesia or whatever it is. And I go, I'm not going to buy Nike products anymore. And I still don't. Okay. I don't affect jack crap for Nike. I mean, they're a multi-gazillion dollar company. Exxon was a multi-gazillion dollar company. They're going to die out anyway. So because oil is on its last legs. So my not buying from Nike is purely my own personal thing, and I'm canceling Nike. Okay, I just actually still have some Nike products. I got like, some shorts or something like that. That's like friggin' 30 years old. Okay, 40 years old, because I got it back then. But that's it. Okay, I don't have any current Nike products, and I'm willing to buy other products. That's my cancel culture, and I've been doing it for a long, long time.
Proud cancel culturist.
Exactly. Yeah, it's my minimum statement.
I think cancel culture is almost like a symptom of like a healthier economy almost, because it's like if we can afford to vote with our capital, be like, well, I'm not going to give them my attention. I'm not going to give them, my money. That means that we've got options. It's a good thing.
Yeah, it's marketing 101.
The more, and I think that we're also going to see a time where, these companies are going to stop using human models, and they're going to just create these AI digital people. And then, if the society just decides to cancel one, they just whip one up, and then boom, you got this whole personality and this whole background story, and they're already out there. We don't even realize it probably, and then to go back further, I think that, to think more about the future of consumption and travel and things like that, I think that there's no way that through this age of automation, with robots and AI taking over all these jobs, it's absolutely absurd to think that there's not going to be a larger gap between the haves and the have-nots. I think that's going to decrease. I think that universal basic income. I think universal basic income is an absolute essential, and I think that we'll move to a place where more people will be able to afford more, because I think that the options that will exist for lower prices and these, and I think that when you have all these billionaires that they're properly getting taxed, I think that universal basic income is going to, there's going to need to be these types of programs.
I actually think it's the opposite. It's going to be the more technology that we have will actually raise more people out of poverty than to put more people into poverty. We will actually have more jobs rather than fewer jobs. And I've talked about this in other segments of this with Sharif here. Technology brings jobs. It is false that technology kills jobs. Now, obviously, the technology kills the job that the technology is supposed to kill, right? I mean, when you build a cheaper camera, then you've killed the job of the camera operator. Okay, you've gotten rid of that. Okay, for example, television news. Okay, used to be you would have the reporter, you have the camera person, and you have a sound person, 3 people, and then you have that truck. Modern news is one person, the reporter, and he brings the camera there and he sets it up and he sets out the mic and all that, and he does everything on his own. And then he goes home and he does the editing on his own, and he submits it to the news station for the 6 o'clock news. All done by one person. So you already killed the camera operator and the sound operator and the driver. Maybe that's co-opted with another thing. So yes, you definitely kill those jobs, but in return, you have hundreds of new jobs created to support all the other things, incidental and secondary and tertiary areas. And we know this. We know this because today, this day and age, 8 billion people on Earth, and we have far fewer people living in poverty now than in 1820, when there was only 1 billion people. Okay, absolute numbers. In absolute numbers, we have fewer people today. You think
that's from technology and not from social?
Of course,
programs?
Of course, it's technology plus social. Of course, it's by social and the government. Okay, without government doing this,
when the textile
without government leading it, you're going to still have discord. You're going to still have mass poverty and all that. Government helped by creating opportunities and such to allow these things to happen.
But how much of that is about things being underreported and or not reported at all?
No, it's pretty well reported. I mean, these things are pretty well researched. This is UN-based research and all that. It's not. It's not.
I mean, so if a news station can suddenly have one guy or a team of 5 people in one office or at their own houses, so that they don't even need to go to an office building. There's less people maintaining all that stuff. So and I can set out the news for every single city. just the group of us. We can have a list of things. We can have our own digital, and that's only a few years away, if not already possible. Where are the new jobs?
I don't know.
I would
That's not, I don't know. Nobody
one of
knows.
the-
There's no
But
new
they
jobs.
will come.
social
They will
programs.
come.
No,
That's the
because
whole
one of the
thing.
things I was
They
going
will
to ask,
come.
I hear what you're saying, Eric, and everything, but the one thing I'm here to ask,
No,
because we can even see this in education, because one of the things that I've noticed is that with COVID and everything, a lot of the buildings, I actually live not that far, I probably can throw a rock at it, at Duke University and everything. So like I said, living near Duke's campus and everything, a lot of the kids were not necessarily going to the campus. So a lot of those buildings have been sitting empty and dormant and not doing what they used to do and everything. So there's been some speculation that some of these buildings may wind up being used for other things because they're not being used for the students, because there's less students that are coming in, more students that are being educated from home, even like the college kids and everything as well. So there will be a number of these. I'm just using Duke as an example. I would imagine the same thing is happening at UCLA, at Yale,
Everywhere.
at a number of these other
Everywhere.
places.
Mhm.
So it sounds to me like that's even like a whole there's going to be a whole bunch of empty buildings that'll be sitting there that will be needing to be used for something. Who knows
Yeah.
what that use will be?
Yeah, exactly.
jobs will
I
change.
just
in this way. Go ahead.
no, please. This is yes. You finish. Then I can yeah.
Okay. Post-COVID era jobs there will be jobs lost. There already have been. Entertainment industry, service industry, absolutely impacted. But the need for technology, data analysts, data-driven decision making, and process improvement and security, that has expanded. That has not contracted. And we need to develop people's skill set for the
Mhm,
economy of the future. And that
mhm,
future is now.
mhm, mhm. Yes. No, no, definitely. And beside that, I also strongly agree with Dr. Eric. Like, okay, like when technology comes, many people lose their jobs. But things are like that when a new things come to the economy, that they create new job as well. Example. I'm sure that this is Shimon. She also know because she has engagement with Bangladesh, right? So like when Bikash, like mobile money transferring, goes to Bangladesh fast, so they are growing very fast. And beside that, I can remember because I visit every remote area of my country, and I saw many remote areas people. Those the young people, those who have mobiles and this thing, they start to doing this business. They start this Bikash and the mobile money transferring business in a remote area. So yes, when the technology goes to example country like Bangladesh for mobile transferring, yes, they cut many middlemen, and beside that, many young community, they also get many jobs. They involve with the technology and money transferring, and they get their new jobs. Same things mobile phone technology. When mobile phone goes to the developing nations, like many people lose job because of many middlemen and other things, they drop from the economy. On the other hand, new people, I can remember many village area, the remote area, they start to selling mobile phone, they start to develop the mobile phone business and other things. This is the way
Exactly.
actually, yeah, economy when some new technology goes, they kill the job, but the new opportunities also grow. This is the
Exactly.
way actually the
I think
economy
that
survive.
yeah, and I agree with I hear that, but I mean, like, let's look at Amazon. Let's look at Amazon. Let's look at like Jeff Bezos. Let's look at these factories he's building, and let's look at all the automation that they're putting in place. That's just directly taking away jobs. And sure, we can sit here and talk about drop shipping, but at the end of the day, how much money is Jeff Bezos making? More after this, after he
It's
automates,
not a
and how much
zero sum
less?
thing. That's the
No,
thing. It's not a
but if you
zero
took
sum
but if
thing.
you look at like minimum wage, and you look at these housing prices, and you look at like the amount of money that people like Jeff, there's a larger gap. Yes, there's
Yeah.
jobs, there's opportunity, but these people, it's not like they're doing what they want to be doing. They're just taking opportunities because that's all that exists, right? Then like drop shipping doesn't seem like a great opportunity to me at all.
No, it isn't, and
And
that
so
should be
and there's
automated.
so it's
That
the
should be automated.
opportunities that are presented by Amazon versus
Mhm.
the opportunities
No,
that are taken, because the amount of times where I'm like, this is what I need, I can go to that store, or I can just sit here on my phone and boop boop, and I'll have it in a day. And so it's like, where are the jobs that are, it's like, yeah, we can talk about like the delivery guy, but it's like in a couple years that'll still be automated. And so it's
And
like,
that's
I
about to
don't I
become,
think that there's a major difference between technology and automation.
And
Technology.
It's the same
Yeah,
thing. It's all a tool.
but it's not.
Just
It's not.
Brent, but it's about to get
When the
worse and
tools sell
everything.
themselves, though,
it's
I
not
think,
going to get
and then when
worse.
they
It's going to
market
get
themselves, when
better.
they repair
No,
themselves.
let me bring up what I'm here to ask you, and this is why I'm saying it could possibly get worse. If what Eric is saying, if what Brent is saying, and I agree with him to some degree, is right, because there are a lot of these jobs that folks are being trained for, oftentimes are jobs in what I would call almost like a plantation type mentality. You're only going to go but so far in a shipping room. You're only going to go so far in a mail room. You're only going to go so far in a restaurant like McDonald's or something like that, and everything.
Exactly.
And if a number of these jobs that are out there now that are being automated are in those fields, which a lot of times is the jobs that folks in the lower class, for lack of a better term, have to take and everything. If those jobs are automated, aren't those the jobs that are eliminated? And if that's the case, then you have a wider gap between those that are on the lower end and those that are on the higher end. And I would even argue the middle class end, because a lot of times those are folks in the middle class as
If
well, like the
everyone's
secretaries and things of that nature.
If everyone's switching to rentals, I think that would be in itself symptomatic of the fact that like people don't have expendable income. If everyone suddenly transitions to this place where they're renting from these major billion-dollar corporations, and we're all working these stupid jobs that are only putting more money in those corporations' pockets because entrepreneurial tasks are unsuccessful more times than not because of the fact that you're competing with these giant organizations. Those aren't jobs. That's like slavery. I think that universal basic income. We want to talk about travel and things like that. No, it's like, how can you travel when you're making like this much money compared to that much money? And that's what you're competing with for these seats on the flights and these hotel rooms.
For sure, governments should be more powerful to use their power of taxation to take away, to take the money from the corporations and from the super wealthy, that we're talking about the Bezos and the Musks and so forth. Right. And not because we need that to fund things. That's absolutely not why you want to tax these. You want to tax them because when people get an obscene amount of money, they do evil things with it. Well, they do nasty things with it. And we want to curb them from being able to do things like that. Okay. And they want to use the power of that money to do whatever the hell they want, and that sometimes become a little bit not good for society. And to take that money from them, and I don't even care if you just take that money and just throw it into the ocean. I couldn't care less where it goes, because it's not a necessary thing to fund things by taxation. Okay, absolutely not at a global level. At a national level, you don't need taxes to fund things. It's we have sovereign currency. We just print it and then that's it. So that's not. So we don't need to tax to fund things. At a local level, certainly. My city, San Francisco, does not have sovereign currency. They need to tax to pay for the services that they provide. Okay. So for sure that you have to tax, and same thing with the state, but at the federal level you don't. Okay, that's the key thing you have to understand.
Have to do, and sorry to interrupt you. One thing they're going to have to do is they're going to have to find a way to regulate things that we may not want to regulate. I'm gonna give you an example. I live right now, and that's actually where I'm calling y'all from, and everything, in an apartment that is owned by GSC. GSC is one of the largest apartment complexes in the country, and all of that. So they own places not just here, but in Nevada. I think they own places in California. I know they own in Florida. They're actually Florida based. So like I said, they can tell me that they're going to up my rent on a regular basis, which they do. And they do that here, but they're also doing it in Florida, Nevada, and everything like that. If I want to make a corporate complaint, who am I actually going to complain to? If I go down to the office, they're just going to tell me that I got to deal with the corporate. The corporate is way the frick in Florida, and one of the corporates is in Las Vegas. So it's like a no-win battle for me. And that's just like one example of what goes on within the apartment complex environment that we've got going on.
And that is a simple.
We can, because the supply chain has been permanently disrupted. You're not going to reverse the Amazon fact. So what we need to do is build a solid defense on creating jobs for people, because you cannot survive on Uber and Lyft and
you can't, obviously not. Yeah.
See, I think that universal basic, because it's, I mean, like, there's just something so soul draining about working a job to just stay over broke, and to just pay your bill. There's nothing that's like expansive about working a job that you just can't stand because it's what you're doing, and I think that there's the other side of it. When Eric was talking about forklifts, I've got a great friend who's a forklift driver, and that's honestly, that job really benefited him dramatically. Just having that, it just kind of changed his life. He was dealing with some things, and so I think that there is a benefit sometimes to just having to work. But I think that for me, like I'm more entrepreneurial. When I have time to like pursue my passions and find out what I'm actually interested in, then I can actually like put forth like all sorts of energy towards accomplishing things. But when I'm working this job that's 40 something hours a week, helping somebody else get pay, build their fortune while I'm just staying just over broke, that's what job is sometimes. It's just
Yeah,
over
it
broke.
is. Yeah.
And I think that that that's not, you're creating cogs in a machine, and you're not really helping expand society, and you're increasing that gap further and further and further. And just because the middle class is got a little, they've got enough money to spend for 3 months, that doesn't mean that the gap isn't getting bigger. Just because the middle class can afford to feed themselves, and they have a job, that doesn't mean that their satisfaction of life is anything that's beneficial, especially because that's another gap, is the satisfaction of life. There's the people that have satisfaction and the people that don't have satisfaction. And I think that is, we're just moving more and more towards a society where it's increasingly difficult to go from zero to to one, as Peter Thiel says. And I think that it's just really to deny that. And I think that like trying to just create jobs versus taxing these giant cash cows and reallocating, and I think that taxing out of fear is absolutely like a terrible idea. I think that to tax out of fear means that person or that group that's taxing is projecting fears of what they would do if they had that money. And so I don't, it's like, look at Bill Gates, my friend who's a venture. But I mean, yeah, sure, we're seeing all sorts of things. Look at people who don't have money too. Should we just keep money out of their hands because they're just all going to be drug addicts? No, absolutely not. But when you look at people like Bill Gates, and you have all these wackos on the internet that want to say all this and that, but at the end of the day, my friends who are actually venture capitalists and working with billions of dollars will tell me that an investment that Bill Gates is involved in is not a inherently a good investment, because Bill Gates will invest in things just because he thinks it has the potential to benefit humanity, not because he's looking for these gains financially. And so I think that to assume that every single person that has money is going to inevitably do evil, I think is silly, because I think that human nature is pretty corrupt in the first place. And so I think that having money, I just think that I think that I don't know. I just try to see that, I think that there's benefits and there's different sides to the angles and stuff. I think that people need to have sources of income, but I think that when you force somebody to do something for 50 hours a week that they can't stand, how are they going to spend it?
Humans are the only species on this planet that says what you just said, that we need a source of income. No other species on this planet uses income to survive. Okay. There's an alternative to to requiring income, and that is to reduce the cost of the material needs. The material needs, housing, food, clothing, shelter, all those things can be given for free. We have an unlimited resource in those things. Food is infinite. Okay, food is infinite. We humans throw away about 40% of the food that we grow. Okay. So we have more food than what we actually need. We have more homes than what we need. Yes, we have here in the United States, we have about 4 million people that are homeless, maybe 8 million, I don't know. But we have like 12 million units that's unoccupied, that could be occupied. These are not, trash places that are not livable. These are functionally unoccupied units. I know here in San Francisco, we have about 30,000. And when I say, wow, 30,000, the person I was talking to said, that's actually not very big. That's a very small number compared to other cities. Okay. We have plenty of places for people to live, and we can put them in there for free. Okay. So housing, we have more clothes. It's a political thing. It's not it's not a technological thing. It is not a economic thing. It's a political thing. We don't want to do it because other people say, screw them. We should tell the people who are opposing. We should tell the people who are opposing such things to say, "Screw you! We're going to put the people in there. We'll fund it. We'll pay the landlord because the landlord obviously doesn't want to do it for free. We'll pay them the market rate. We don't have to worry about it. You, Mark, you're worried that your GSC is going to raise your rent. Okay, GSC ain't going to raise your rent if every unit is occupied around the world, around the country, and around the neighborhood. And then you would be able to say to GSC, "Screw you! I'm going to move to some place that's free." Okay, then they're going to say, "Okay, how about $200 a month instead?" Okay, they'll do that because otherwise it's going to be empty for them. Okay, so we can create. We actually don't even have to create. We already currently have more supply than demand in housing. More supply than demand in food, more supply than demand in clothing. Okay, every one of those things, we have more supply than demand.
But we have to recognize that the distribution channel itself,
of course, yes,
flawed.
and to make that distribution channel work is a political thing. Okay, because there are people there that are just doing nothing more than just strangling it to prevent that distribution channel from being able to work more effectively. They're riding on that. They're depending on this regulatory capture to prevent other people from accessing it.
A two-party system is not going to change this.
No, that's true. I mean,
we definitely need a third party.
And I think that, to go back, one of the reasons why I like universal basic income, and I'm someone who actually leans libertarian. So, I'm a left leaning libertarian. So I'm for social programs that work and that make sense. I'm not, so in my mind, take it like it's like, you would have to take those properties by force in order to provide them for free. And I don't see that as being beneficial.
You pay them market rate. You pay them market rate.
So then to go further, I think that that's also completely inefficient because then you're allowing these people to regulate the pricing and the money that we're paying, that the government is paying, that we're paying in taxes to the government so that it can pay to these landlords. Doesn't make sense because what would make sense. No, because you're inflating. It's inflation.
No, it is not. Like I said, the supply is greater than demand.
Then why are 9 million people a year dying from starvation?
Mr. Brent,
they're not dying from starvation because of lack of food. They're dying of starvation because governments are not paying, not giving anything. And it is not 5 billion people. It's not 5 million people.
9 million people. Okay. 9 million people. I said, Eric.
Mr. Brent. Okay. First, Dr. Eric, what do you want to say in favor of you? Then, Mr. Ilman, we will listen to you. Yes, Dr. Eric.
What do you want me to talk about?
No, about your strategy. Yes, about your strategy that how we can give them. Yes,
it's a little bit late. I actually have to get off. I have another call I have to do pretty soon.
Yes,
but I'm happy to tell you that another time.
Okay. So what I was saying though is that is such a solution that would be defined by the government paying for rent, and then the government paying for food, and then the government paying for this and that, and giving us rentals, and that's ridiculous.
We're already doing that though. We're already doing that.
And so doing more of that doesn't make sense. What would make more
sense? It does make sense because it works.
All right, never mind, Eric. I can't get a word.
Okay, thank you. I think that we have to go for. Yes.
I know we got to get ready to go. I know you get ready to wrap up, but I did have a question that comes to my mind as well, because one of the things that we're seeing here, I would argue up and down the East Coast, is the fact that, and it comes back to what you were talking about the whole show, Sharif, about consumption, is that we're seeing a number of folks that are homeless for whatever reasons they might be homeless, but they're actually in even more of a pickle than they used to be in, because before they would ask for cash, and guess what? Folks would have cash to give them. But now, how many people of us actually travel with cash in our pockets? So right. I think that their ability to even get to the money has become less, because most of us, and I mean, I'm being honest when I tell the homeless guy that I don't have any dollars in my hand, because I probably just went and made a transaction on a credit card. So like I said, if he's asking me for $1, I don't have $1 to give him.
And I think addressing the mental health issues is essential as well. Because if you give someone a house, and they are drug addicts, you're not going to solve their problems. They're still going to be, putting, as many drug addicts in that house to pay for their drug addiction. These things are not as simple as just being like, hey, government, give it to us, But I think that there will always be people that are on the lower rungs of society. And I think that there are more efficient ways to handle this than just forcing those that, than forcing, landlords and property owners to be
You're
paid.
not forcing anyone. You're not forcing anyone.
Then what do you? I mean, you just said that the government's going to pay market rate for these rental units to provide them for free.
That's not a force.
Why would these?
That's not a force.
Why would these? No, but then those companies that own the property are going to force the government to pay them what they want to be paid.
Yeah,
that's a force. That's a force. That's capitalism forcing people like us to pay.
You don't have to pay. You don't have to pay. The government will pay. We've already.
That's us. Where do you think tax dollars come from, Eric?
Mr. Brent.
Who do you think's paying these
it
tax
doesn't
dollars,
have
Eric?
to be paid
Why
by
are you
you.
yelling? Why are you yelling at me?
Look. Okay. Let me explain. Back last April, we wrote a bill to give $3 trillion. We gave $3 trillion to corporations and people last April because of COVID. There was not 1 cent of tax that was raised to fund that. Okay, not 1 cent. If anything, we actually paid less than taxes because of yes and no. Okay, because of the tax cut that was passed in 2017. We have not raised taxes at the federal level to compensate for the $3 trillion that we gave, 3 or 4 trillion, whatever it is, back in April. Okay, so our federal debt went up by $4 trillion and all that to now it's like $23 trillion. Who cares? We're at 23 trillion. Next year it'll be 25 trillion. The year after it'll be 30 trillion. The year after that is 40 trillion. You know when's the last time the United States had a zero debt? The United States had zero national debt in 1820, maybe 1830. Okay, so for the last 190 to 200 years, the United States had been in a national debt. Does anybody care? We still have. No, China doesn't care. China does not care.
China doesn't care because they're overtaking us, and they're not going to continue to give us credit when we don't have money.
They're not. That you don't understand how the government
just goes down and down. I don't understand.
Okay. What do you mean? What do you mean it's going down? $1 is still worth $1.
Okay, Mr. Brent, please listen. That is the point we are just discussing. That different argument will come, but
I understand.
Dr. Eric, yes, Dr. Eric. He want to explain. Then
I know. I was
trying
to discuss, and he just kept interrupting.
No problem. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Dr. Eric, yes.
I buy from Trader Joe's. That's where I go to get my groceries. Okay. The $1.99 baguette that I buy there has been $1.99 for the last 10 years. Okay.
And so
the $1.99, the $1.99 for the quart of milk, half and half that I get has been $1.99 for the last 10 years. Okay. There is no inflation. Okay, the only way to create inflation is to artificially restrict supply. Okay, and people do that. That's what we have. We have NIMBYs, not in my backyard, people in San Francisco and everywhere else, restricting supply that causes
you live in San Francisco. Yeah, you're talking about the rent.
Rent rises because there's an artificial restriction. Okay, that's an artificial restriction by not allowing construction to occur. If construction is allowed to occur,
there's just so much space. There's space in I've been to San Francisco and Oakland and the Bay
Area. San Francisco can triple its population with no effect. Okay, San Francisco is physically larger than Paris. San Francisco is 47 square miles. Paris is 41 square miles.
How many homeless people are in San Francisco?
Paris has 2.3 million people. San Francisco currently has 880,000 people. We can triple our population with no problem.
Mental health issues in San Francisco are nothing like.
Look. All those issues you're talking about are real. but they're doable. They're fixable. They're not.
Including inflation.
You're just throwing. There is no inflation. It's still $1.99 for the goddamn half and half.
And what
We
about
have
the gas?
not inflated.
Okay, Mr. Brent.
Jesus Christ! Why talk about inflation? There's no inflation. Gas prices actually went negative. We actually had negative price for
Then why is
future
it
of
three?
oil.
Okay, Mr. Brent.
Because it's the market rate. It's what you're willing to pay. San Francisco people are wealthy.
It's
They're
not-
willing to pay
it's
$4 a gallon. You go to Nevada, they're not willing to pay $4 a gallon. They're going to pay $2 a gallon. It's nothing to do with the amount of gas. We have more fuel. We have more
You're right. It has
oil.
nothing to do with the amount of gas.
We have more oil
It's inflation.
than we need. That's why we had futures with negative prices last April. Okay. Because oil has to be used. It has
We're
to be
still
consumed.
talking about the gap increasing because those prices were
They're
what they were while
You are
the price
under-
at the pump was absorbed.
Mr. Brent. Okay, we want to give. Thank you, Dr. Eric.
Thank you.
We want to give chance to Mark Lee and DC Simon. I think they want to add something.
But I have to leave. I have to leave because I have a 9 a.m. Conference call.
Okay. Just concluding remarks for today.
Okay.
Dr. Eric, yes.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Yes.
Okay, very cool.
Okay, Mark Lee.
Yeah, I was just trying to. Well, he's gone now, but I was just trying to figure out the different prices because I know that my prices of groceries, and I don't know about anybody else's, but I've definitely seen them fluctuate over the last several weeks and everything. Where sometimes the loaf of bread might be $1, sometimes it might be $1.25 or $1.10 or some other prices. So I know I've definitely seen prices fluctuate. So it just in different items. So like I said, I'm trying to figure out what grocery store he goes to because I need to go to that grocery store if the prices are always the same and everything. Because I'm trying to figure out where this grocery store is. Because I don't know about you, Rana, or you, Brent, but I know that different products have different prices at different times that I've experienced over the last several years. So.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay. Yes. DC Simon. Oh yeah.
Well, I was saying that I do not believe government can fix this problem. I do not believe government should fix this problem. And I do not think it's realistic for us to expect that the abundant resources that we have being wasted are going to be solved on an honor system. What we need to do, however, is we need to enable dignified living based upon the real ground conditions that we're experiencing. People can't afford their rents. People can't afford to buy food. They can't afford to take care of their family. What can we do to solve that problem? That's our work to be done. And government doesn't fix that. We need to work with government. Yes, we need to hold government accountable, but it isn't just government. It is us too.
Yeah,
Thank
definitely
you.
agree with you
Mr.
on
Brent
that.
Hellman. Yes, Mr. Brent.
Yeah,
Hellman.
I agree with what you're both saying completely. I think that, switching everything to communism, extreme communism, where, the government is just taking away property from property owners and taking away food from food vendors and giving them to the poor, let's look at what happened to the USSR and, in Russia and Stalin and things like that. Didn't work. You just had a bigger gap of the haves and have-nots. Those people that, gravitated towards the government and, the control, and the means of production, they still had it. And the people that didn't. And so it's like having a computer and being able to like drop ship and tap into these bigger corporations' profit structures is not means of production, And so if we're going to talk about, helping these people who are the working class or below, maintain and we're going to use like these communistic ideals of like just taking property from people and things like that. First off, you got to look at how these Marxist concepts work and which they don't, because of human nature, but it's like a very short-sighted idea and define, the idea that inflation doesn't exist. I'm not even going to really touch on it at this point, but I just think that we can't rely on the government, but I see universal basic income as a way where the government gives everyone something that they can do something with. If somebody's given us X amount of money and they choose to not spend it on food, or they choose to not spend it on rent, that's on them. But should we then take money from the rest of society to, so that we're spending 5 times or 3 times the amount of money to make sure that this person is in a house? And I think that there is a degree to which, there's like, health benefits to, preventing homelessness and things like that. But I just think that, like, having this extreme, creating big government and all these different aspects of the government, so that the government can, like, put out its helping hands and help us as benevolently as governments are. I mean, let's look at any government in the past that's, like, tried to just benevolently control and moderate all that stuff. It's never worked out. And
because ultimate power corrupts. When you get that much power, that much resource, you're not going to use it for the good of people. You're going to use it for the good of your pocket.
Exactly. And to think that, like, a universal basic income is like something we should fear, because what are they going to do with the money is ridiculous. Because then it's like, well, if you're not going to give them that money and the government's going to spend it to make sure that it's not money and it's things, what are they going to do with that money?
Right.
Exactly.
Hey, Brent, haven't we already, and I think it's working well, but it seems to me that we just need to, if we're going to do, because we're already to some degree doing almost universal basic income when we're doing the stimulus money, when we do the stimulus money effectively. So like I said, that is a form of universal based income when you give out $900 or whatever the amount is that they're trying to do on a regular basis. So it sounds like we're already trying to have an experimentation in what you are proposing. It just needs to be on an expansive level.
We
exactly.
are, but it's not enough. It's not enough to solve the
right.
Okay. Thank you for today's discussions. We learned a lot, different perception, especially about technology, as well as the universal basic incomes and how we can distribute our wealth and resources. This is very valuable, and definitely World Talent Economy Forums, Asia Research and Development Institutions, Al Noor Academy, School of Talent Economy, we are working together. So we have research institutions. So we will do research, market research, that how we can solve this problem. Then definitely the speakers, those who discussing today, we will definitely like get some sort of guideline from your side, as well as we want to do some market research. And definitely it's important, like universal basic income is helpful, or if we can give them like free food, free accommodations and free clothes, maybe it will be helpful. That is our objective, actually. World Talent Economy Forum, we want to find out the problem as well as proper solutions. So how I find out the gap today, I think for economy it will be very, very effective and important. But I just want to share that from Asia Pacific, maybe we have different culture, different perception. Even though China government has a strong control over their economy, China playing a very good role in the COVID-19 situation, as well as even if you see that how their economy growing very fast. I say China has more sovereign in their hand, China has more successful corporation in their hand, and they are doing very good effective business with the developing economy. So anyway, we will do research on that particular point. I think today's debate and discussions is very, very, very valuable for our youth community. And if you have any kind of feedback and information you want to do research in our team, you can join in World Talent Economy Forum Research Hub, and definitely we will find out the way how we can fix these things, because we need more data, more informations, and more solutions. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. Mr. Brent Elman, Mark Lee, and DC Simon, I know that you have a lot of issues, but you join with us, and hopefully in future you will join Mark Lee and DC Simon, everybody. Thank you for today's session.
No, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Definitely will try to join you back again in the near future. And to both Dawn and Brent, and I was going to mention it to Eric as well. Y'all can find me on LinkedIn. So hopefully y'all will connect with me on that platform, because definitely would love to maintain connection with you both here on Sharif's forum, as well as just in general.
Will you be recording, Sharif, or is this just a one-way discussion? Do you share the recording out? Is this recorded?
Yes. I will share with you.
Awesome.
Okay.
Gentlemen, thank you for a great discussion. I've got a
Thank you.
I'll talk to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Cheers.